Christmas dinner smelled like rosemary and oranges, and something I finally had the sense to name. Not anger that had burned itself down months ago. The scent drifting in under the lamb. And the pine was the sharp, that gray sweater I'd bought him when grad school had eaten his face, hair combed into a man who believed in mirrors. He raised his glass and cleared his throat. Conversations softened into the hum that happens before a storm. "Dad," he said, facing me. "We talked. We decided. You're no longer part of this family. We need you to leave this house tonight." In the doorway, the tree blinked. It's perfect. Strangers blink. The silver garland sienna had insisted on caught the light like it had always been there. The laughter died like it had been told to behave. My cousin stopped passing the potatoes. Sienna, his wife, held her napkin with 2 fingers and smiled. A small smile that wasn't meant for me at all. I looked past them, past the plates and the candles and the faces, pretending this was courage and not cruelty. The one I'd fixed a dozen times across 3 decades, Margaret's clock, the pendulum doing its job because no one had. Told it to pick a side. It ticked. I breathed. I didn't make a speech. I didn't ask for reasons. I didn't invite them into the place where my chest had learned the shape of silence. I just nodded once, stood, and slid an envelope across the table toward my son. "Here's your gift," I said. A few people laughed, the way you do when you think someone has told a joke you haven't heard yet. Darren pulled the flap with the same impatience he used to have for sticky tape on cereal boxes. He opened it. He started screaming. It wasn't rage at first. It was the sound a man makes when he finds out the waterline isn't where he thought. It was that the map he'd drawn on a napkin was wrong. My cousin Ben set his fork down like it weighed more than metal. The room, so tastefully lit, so carefully staged, went heavy with the consequence of a plan finally landing. That was the beginning, not the end. The beginning of an accounting I had avoided for too long. 3 months earlier, if you'd walked into this house, you would have called me the rock of it. Darren had, in his grade school essays, in the toast he made when he moved his things back into the guest room for a month after grad school, because the market's crazy, Dad. Arthur Margaret used to tell me, folding towels the way she liked, corners neat as Navy hospital corners. You give too much. You'll say yes so many times you won't remember what your own name. It feels like in your mouth. After she passed, the house got quiet around the edges. Quiet is not the same as peace. With streaming shows I never watched, with the well-meant slam of cabinet doors, then came Sienna, and a voice that sounded like a courtesy bell in a hotel polite. A finger along the kitchen counter I'd sanded down myself in 2002. "Open this up. Light. Energy. Those curtains," she said the week after. "There, vintage Arthur. Let's just brighten everything," she said, sweeping her hand at the furniture I'd repaired with glue and patience and the kind of late-night stubbornness that had kept us fed for 30 years. I nodded. I said yes. I held the ladder when they painted the walls that had held Margaret's laughter. I told myself this is what love looks like when your love is dead and your people are building their own. When they asked for the master bedroom, I said, "Take it." "You're young," I said. "I sleep fine anywhere. I'll make the study." "Nice for you," Sienna said, that bell in her voice. I said thank you like a man, saying grace to a God he hoped was still listening. But quiet doesn't mean blind. A year ago, the invites to dinner dried up. The first time I heard Sienna laugh and say, "We figured you'd eaten, Arthur," I hadn't. Then came the accounts. I signed where he pointed. Within 2 weeks, a Ring camera watched over the front porch like a third eye I hadn't invited. A realtor came by just to get a sense of the market. Sienna, glass of wine in her hand and a smile that sliced its own paper, told my relatives. At a funeral, Arthur's not really part of the plan, but we're doing our best to include him. I found out later that day from Ben, who pulled me aside by the ham and said, "Arthur, are you okay?" "Didn't say that," I said. "I didn't say any of that." He looked away. It wasn't even anger. It was a clean, cold thing that slid into my spine and made everything above it stand up. They weren't waiting for me to die. They were writing the eulogy early. I didn't confront them. I didn't slam a door I would later have to fix. The next morning, I went into the garage, and I read the deed Margaret and I had signed in 1994. The refinance we'd taken in 2009 when Darren needed braces. Every page of fine print that had stolen nights I'll never get back. I read the mortgage statements that never missed a month. I read the property tax receipts I paid with checks and pride.
Okay.
I read the line where my signature belonged and saw how it looked. Next to Marguerite's a matched set. Then I read the new things. The joint account paperwork Darren had asked me to sign, the auto-pay forms, the authorization to manage utilities. I read the sentences where my name had been typed under gray boxes and thought about my hand in a younger man's teaching. Him too, write it for the first time in crayon. When I was done reading, I made 3 calls. Not to Darren, not to Sienna. To people who had never lived in this house, but who knew how to keep people in their houses and keep sharks from sniffing out blood. The first was to my neighbor, Ben, who was not just a cousin in the way people in our town use the word cousin as a net. He was also a CPA with a patience for paper I did not possess. Bring everything, he said. And Arthur, don't sign anything else. The second was to the bank manager who had been a teller when Margaret and I opened our first account. Her name was Janelle Klein. She'd watched us argue in whispers over pennies. We didn't have and watched us deposit checks that felt like miracles. Come in, she said. Today, the third was to an attorney I'd never needed before. The lawyer's name was Evelyn Hart. Her office smelled like coffee and new cardboard. When I told her what Sienna had said to my family, what Darren had asked me to sign, what I had found in the drawer, she didn't call it complicated. She called it by its name. Financial abuse, she said. Or the start of it. I don't want to fight, I said. You already have one, she said, not unkindly. The question is whether you choose your ground. Together we chose ground, then set up forensic. Monitoring on the shared account alerts for any transfers over a threshold, a watch list for new PEs. He was gentle in the way only people who've seen the same thing 100 times learn to be gentle. Janelle froze anything that could be frozen. My name. She added 2-factor authentication and made sure the numbers went to my flip phone, which she teased me about and then blessed. Evelyn started laying the bones of a plan. Do you have a trust? She asked. We had a will, I said. Trusts are instructions. We're going to put your house in a revocable, trust-sure name as trustee. A. Clear successor. You keep a life estate. No one can sell it without going through you, and we'll document everything. You're not paranoid. Prudent. She asked me a question no one had asked me since Margaret left. Who do you trust? It took me a full minute to say the name out loud. My sister, I said. Elaine. She lives in Baltimore. Should drive here if I called at 3 in the morning to say my shoe had come untied. Good, Evelyn said. She'll be your successor trustee over the next week, while Sienna ordered cabinet samples and Darren sent me links to articles about the benefits of aging in place communities. I signed papers in offices that smelled like toner and responsibility. Evelyn filed the trust. Janelle issued new cards and closed old lines. Ben set alerts that buzzed my phone when money did something it shouldn't. I learned the feel of a plan taking root. Feels like sleep finally finding you on a hot night. It feels like a wrench finally fitting the bolt it was meant for. I didn't set traps the way movies teach you to. I followed the lines they had already drawn. 2 weeks later, I made a small transfer to the shared account from my own checking $500, labeled plumber. Within an hour, there was a matching debit labeled Sienna. Holiday invite RSVPs. The next morning, a $2,100 transfer to a vendor I didn't recognize. Ben traced it to a PR firm. A week after that, $350 to Ring Pro Protect Plus. They were building a story with my money and inviting me as a guest. I kept notes, dates, times, amounts. I kept the tone a man uses for a shopping list. Milk. Bread. $2,100 to PR. $350 to cameras. $500 holiday catering deposit. I also did something small and petty that I do not apologize for. I reclaimed the house 1 square foot at a time. I fixed the bad hinge they'd been living with for months and said nothing. I replaced the batteries in the smoke detectors so they'd stop chirping at 3 a.m. I oiled the grandfather clock and listened to it tick like a metronome practicing for the day it would be needed. One evening, I walked into the kitchen at 6:15. "We already ate," Sienna said, smiling. "We figured I hadn't," I said evenly. I took a pan, cracked 2 eggs into butter, and sat at the island while Darren scrolled his phone and pretended not to notice that his father was cooking alone in his own house. "Dad," he said after a while, "we should talk about assisted living. It would be a good fit. And it's time we updated the title to make things simple. Sienna's good with paperwork. We can help." "Not tonight," I said. "It's Christmas in 2 weeks. We'll all be together. We can talk then." I watched something move behind Sienna's eyes, her annoyance at being told to wait, or a spark that said she'd already decided what words she would set on the white plates we used for holidays. Either way, the clock ticked. I ate my eggs. Invitations went out. Holiday dinner, bell house, formal. Group text chattered with emojis and passive-aggressive questions about dessert. Sienna designed place cards in a font I had to squint at. Darren printed photos and taped them to the hallway while his kids smile. His graduation cap, his engagement, his wedding like a campaign poster that forgot to mention the person who took the pictures. I put on my dark suit on Christmas afternoon. The good one with Margaret's seam taped inside the right sleeve, because she'd mended it once and then again, and then told me to buy a new one. I never did. The house shone the way houses do when someone who cares about appearances has had time. The tree was taller than sense. The silver ribbon looked like a magazine had sent it. The lamb came out of the oven perfectly pink. The potatoes were crisp. Sienna sprinkled flaky salt like a priest making a promise. We ate. We toasted. Cousin Ben told a story about falling off a roof in 1991 and surviving. Lane called and put her voice on the table like a blessing. Darren refilled glasses and stood at the head like an heir. Then he cleared his throat and did the brave thing. He thought he'd learned from me. Did not learn it from me. "Dad," he said, "you voted, and you're no longer a member of our family. We need you to leave this house tonight."
Happened like in a play.
My fork settled on the plate. The heat from the lamb stuck around my face like a habit. The Ring camera in the foyer watched an empty room. The clock ticked, and I slid the envelope. Inside was not a letter and a scolding. It was a stack of paper. It was a map. It was the trust. Properly recorded, with my name and Elaine's, and the clause that lawyers call a no contest and normal people call a dare. It was the deed transferring the house to that trust 3 weeks earlier, with a life estate to me and the remainder to a scholarship fund. Margaret and I had talked about after the last time we went to a high school graduation and cried like we'd been told to. It was a 30-day notice to quit the premises, prepared by Evelyn and addressed to licensees living at my indulgence. It was a ledger of every transfer Darren had authorized off the shared account, with dates and vendors and copies of screenshots. It was a letter from Janelle revoking any third-party access. It was a restraining order application left unsigned. A message, more than a move. It was a copy of Margaret's will and a note in her handwriting, taped neatly to it 3 decades ago. If you forget who you are, Arthur, read this. It was a photograph printed at CVS, Sienna, and a realtor standing on our front lawn 2 weeks earlier. Discussing sale comparables while I was in the garage. Finishing the sanding on a chair that didn't deserve to be replaced. That was why. He screamed, not because I'd come for his pride, it's because I had refused to give him mine. He slammed his hands on the table and stood. "You can't do this," he said. "This is my house." "It isn't," I said quietly. "I haven't lived here like it was for a year, which was my mistake. I'm correcting it." Sienna stood too. She had the grace to look at the papers before she spoke. Her eyes skimmed the headings and found the words she understood. Trust, deed. Notice, she looked at me then, straight, direct. Not a smile in sight. "You waited," she said. "You waited until the audience was here?" "No," I said. "I waited until the clock said it was time." Behind her, the grandfather clock ticked. Margaret's clock. Our clock. The one that never cared who won arguments, only that we kept. Time. 3 months earlier, the house still wore my name on the mailbox and someone else's fingerprints on the doorknobs. Evelyn Hart's office looked out over a parking lot that had seen more divorces finalized than I wanted to know about. She pushed her glasses up and slid a yellow pad toward me. "Say it out loud," she said. "What do you want?" It took longer than it should have. "I want to stay in my house," I said. "I want to stop paying for a story I didn't write. I want their hands out of my pockets. I want the part of me that says yes to stop running the show." Evelyn nodded. "Good list." She drew 3 boxes and wrote, "House, money, boundaries. Here's what we'll do," she said. "We'll move the house into a revocable living, trust, your rules. We'll record a deed that reserves you a life estate. If anyone tries to sell, they find themselves on a street with no names. We'll appoint a successor trustee, someone you trust." I said, "Elaine?" "Done." She wrote Elaine in neat block letters. "We'll add a no contest clause. We'll document your capacity doctor's note, witnesses. Then money. We'll separate your accounts and add authentication. We'll set alerts and boundaries." She looked at me with a clinical kindness. "We'll put it on paper because people who don't respect spoken boundaries won't respect invisible ones." From Evelyn, I went to the bank. Janelle Kleinsame. Smile she'd had when she handed Margaret and me our first ATM card 30 years back, shook my hand and pulled up screens that might as well have been x-rays. "We'll move the utilities back to your checking," she said, fingers flying. "We'll remove third-party access on the home equity line. 2-factor authentication goes to your phone. No new payees without your say-so." She tapped the screen. "Sure you still want paper statements?" "I like knowing that." "Mailman knows my name," I said. She smiled. "So do I. I'll make sure he still does." Ben's office smelled like coffee and the kind of quiet that makes people tell the truth by accident. "You signed a shared account agreement," he said gently, "and they're using it like an operating account. We'll set up alerts. Any debit over $200 pings you and me. New payees trigger a review. Don't confront them when you see something, just log it. Let the paper stack." I did. I became a student of my own house. I tested the lines the way you test a floorboard you're pretty sure is going to give. I put $500 into the shared account, memo, plumber, within an hour. There was a debit to a boutique PR firm I'd never heard of. 2 days later, $350 to the Pro Protect Plus plan for the Ring camera I hadn't asked for. A week after that, $2,100 to Sienna Events holiday RSVPs. When an assessment fee to a realtor's portal hit for $299, Ben underlined it in red. I kept a notebook in the garage because the garage was still mine. Date, amount, memo, vendor. I didn't write adjectives. Just nouns and verbs and numbers that belonged to me before they didn't. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Sienna staged her test flights. "Assisted living has great social activities, Arthur," she said one night, tapping an article with a glossy photo of men my age throwing beanbags at a hole while a woman in a polo shirt clapped. "I like my chair," I said. "You could give us the house," she said later, forehead furrowed with feigned concern. "We'll take care of it. You can focus on you." "I like my house," I said. Darren tried charm. "Dad, let me give back. Let me handle the bills. You did it for 30 years. It's my turn." "You can buy the lamb," I said. "I'll pay the mortgage." Evelyn called that week. 2 things she said. "Trust is recorded. The deed is filed. Your life estate is ironclad. And get a doctor's letter. Not because you need it, because people like Sienna like to say words like capacity the moment paper doesn't go their way." Apnum, Dr. Patel kind. Efficient did the little tests. Checked the boxes. "Arthur," she said, smiling, "if you're trying to move out of your house, I'll worry. If you're trying to stay, you're as sound as the clock you. Keep fixing." I put the letter in the folder. Evelyn added an affidavit of intent to the trust file 3 witnesses, a notary seal for signatures. The paper was heavy and away paper, sometimes is promise heavy. Janelle put a hold on the home equity line. "No draws," she said. "Any new request bounces to me and to you." Ben flagged the shared account to require dual approvals. "For transfers, they'll hate this," he said. "Hate is fine." I didn't set out to humiliate anyone. I set out to give my spine a job. Then I did a different kind of test, the human kind. One night I said to Darren, let's talk about Christmas. Everyone's coming. I want it simple. Lamb potatoes, green beans, no speeches. Sienna smiled. Of course, she said, which in her mouth sounded like a challenge accepted. I waited the day before Christmas Eve. I watched the Ring app on Darren's tablet while I couldn't find the remote. Sienna didn't bother to hide it anymore. The realtor in a camel coat stood on my lawn and pointed at the eaves. With the right buyer, we can get over ask. Even with the old roof, she said. My dad thinks the roof's fine, Darren said, hands in his pockets, looking like a boy who couldn't decide whether to tell the teacher what he'd done. Sienna laughed, all bell and ice. Your dad thinks a lot of things, she said. We'll time the listing for spring, insisted. Living will suddenly make sense. She made the air quotes with 2 manicured fingers. The Ring camera saw them. Ben saw them. I saw enough. Evelyn drafted a letter that wasn't a trap, but felt like a line. House license agreement month to month. You'll offer it as a courtesy, she said. $1 rent. House rules. You as licensor. They as licensees. The moment they refuse to sign, we have a refusal on paper. The moment they violate it, we have cause. I slid it across the island 2 nights before Christmas. Next to a bowl of oranges and the kind of quiet you can cut. Legal nonsense, Sienna said. Not touching it. Respect, I said. Darren pushed it back with 2 fingers. We're family. Exactly, I said. Sign it. They didn't, so I had Evelyn draft the 30-day notice to quit. I had Janelle print a statement that showed the shared count shuffling my money toward vendors with Sienna's name on the invoices. Ben prepared a tidy ledger. It's amounts. Vendors. I added a letter of my own, in my handwriting. Not for the lawyer, and not for the bank, 2 paragraphs that said, you can stay 30 days, rent-free, if you behave like guests and not owners. If you don't, you'll leave with the sheriff. Escort. No speeches. No eulogies while I'm still above ground. I printed a photo at the pharmacy down the road of Sienna and the realtor on my lawn. I tucked it in the back of the folder, behind the trust, with its no contest clause, and the doctor's letter, with its kind phrase, no cognitive impairment. Anne Margaret's old note, taped to her will. If you forget who you are, read this. That was what lived in the envelope I slid across the table. That was what made Sienna's smile go silent and Darren's voice break. He screamed until the room shrank. Then he tried something else. Dad, he said in his reasonable voice, palms spread, a politician's move he hadn't earned. We should talk in private. We can talk in the living room, I said, standing with witnesses. We moved to the living room. The tree watched. The clock ticked, impartial. Cousin Ben sat on the arm of the couch like he was afraid to break it. My sister Elaine's voice was a rectangle on my phone speakerphone. Baltimore 3 states away. Hard at the table. He said my name like a rope thrown from a boat. Arthur, I'm here, I said. Sienna started with spin. We're worried about you, she said smoothly. You're vulnerable to scams. The house is too much. It consolidated with the family account to protect you from taxes. We've been carrying the load. Ben held up the ledger. No, you haven't, he said, not unkindly. Just like a man who has seen numbers misbehave and knows how to call them home. He has Janelle's letter lay on the coffee table. Evelyn's notice next to it. The trust deed with the little county clerk stamp ink that mattered. Darren tried humor. Dad, you're being dramatic. I installed the smoke detectors. I said I've been dramatic about worse. He tried guilt. After everything I've done for you, you mean the Ring subscription and the PR plan? I said evenly. You sent my money to a firm to make Sienna's holiday parties? Look like philanthropy. You called a realtor to sell my house while I was downstairs fixing your hinge. You told people I wanted assisted living. You didn't invite me to dinner in my own house. I looked at him. I raised you. I did not raise this. He took a step back like the air had pushed him. He looked at Sienna. She didn't look back. She was reading the no contest clause. When she got to the line that said, any beneficiary who contests this trust without probable cause forfeits any benefit. She blinked. Probable cause, she murmured, mind doing math that didn't involve love. There's more, I said. because I didn't want any of this creeping back under the door after tonight. I held up a letter Margaret's handwriting in mine at the bottom of the page where we had signed a promise after the last graduation speech we'd cried through. After I go, said, this house doesn't go to you. It goes to the Margaret Bell Scholarship Fund. Kids from this town who don't have a ladder yet. That was our plan. Yours is different. Mine is older. Darren flinched. You could call it betrayal. I called it a correction. Sienna took a breath and let it out like she knew how to breathe in front of judges. We can challenge this, she said crisp. Undue influence. He's confused. Elaine's voice came through my phone like a thin wire. Hi, Sienna. Elaine Bell. I'm the successor trustee. There's a doctor's letter. There are 3 witnesses. There's video of you on his lawn with a realtor. Try it, and you'll lose your share under the no contest clause. Talk to a lawyer who doesn't like your father. She'll tell you. The same. Silence took a seat. Cousin Ben cleared his throat. Artie, he said, switching to the name only people who knew me before mortgages used. Tell them the terms. I did. Here are the options, I said, looking at both of them. Option 1. You stay 30 days. You do not call contractors. You do not spend $1 that isn't yours. You do not bring a realtor to my lawn. Do not tell people. I have chosen to leave my own house. You help me put up the dishes after dinner. You move out by January 25th at noon. I will even pay first month's rent at a decent place to make it easier. That is generosity, not obligation. Option 2. Leave in 72 hours with a civil standby from the sheriff. You can pick up your things by appointment. You will not like option 2. Darren laughed too high. You wouldn't call the sheriff on your son? Watch me, I said. He sat. He rubbed his hands over his face, looked at the tree like it might give him a different sentence to say. Dad, he said, and we can make this good? You can stay in the guest room. Well, I'm staying in my bedroom, I said. You're in the guest room, or you're gone. He looked at Sienna. She had gone very still. It wasn't surrender. It was calculation's quiet cousin. Assessment. Now that the plan had changed. 30 days, she said finally. Will need a lease after that? We'll help with no lease, I said. This is my house. I'm not your landlord. I'm your father and your host. You'll be out by the 25th. She tried one more angle. Darren is your only child, she said softly. Do you really want your last act to be cutting your son out of his inheritance? I want my last act to be keeping a promise to your mother, I said to Darren. You can inherit that if you want, or you can inherit a fight with a trust. You'll lose. He looked at the folder. He looked at me. He looked at the clock. He stood. 30 days, he said. 30 days, I said. Sienna nodded once. Fine, she said. We went back to the table. The lamb was cold. Potatoes were the kind of crisp you have to hope for on purpose. We had missed it. People pretended to find their forks. The tree blinked like it did not understand human. Beings in was grateful for that. Cousin Ben raised his glass of water because someone had to raise something. To Margaret, he said. Simple, right? Who always knew how to set a table. To Margaret, the room murmured. After dessert, I washed dishes because that is my way of praying. Sienna dried because she is not impolite. Darren stacked plates noisily, like force could dislodge shame. I went to my room, the master. Mina Gandon closed the door and sat on the edge of the bed and put my elbows on my knees and let the weight lift off my spine like a bag I hadn't known I'd been carrying. My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. How did it go? I wrote back. He screamed. We negotiated. 30 days. Thank you, she replied. Good. Expect pushback. Send me anything they send you. Rest another buzz. Janelle. FYI, attempted online transfer from shared to new payee blocked. You're locked down. Merry Christmas, Arthur. Merry Christmas, I wrote back, and meant it. I slept in my bed, and the house did not fight me for it. In the morning, the Ring app pinged her in, opening the front door at 7 a.m., stepping out. To make a call, I didn't listen. I went to the kitchen and made coffee and scrambled eggs and set a plate at my place and one at the end of the island. Darren walked in, rubbed his face, and sat on the stool. He didn't look at me, picked up his fork and put it down and finally said, without the theater, I thought I was fixing us. You were fixing a picture, I said. Pictures aren't people. He nodded. Okay, he said. Okay. Sienna came in a minute later, eyes unpuffy, hair perfect, jaw set. She poured coffee like someone pouring a drink for a person she wasn't sure she liked. She said nothing. That, for Sienna, was a concession. It would get worse before it got better. People who lose control always pull on the last rope twice, but the house had shifted. The clock still ticked. The tree still blinked. The folder lay. On the buffet, quiet as law, loud as memory, what was in it had done what it was supposed to do. Draw a line and offer a way back that didn't involve pretending. Asterisk, the morning after Christmas. The house felt different in the way a room feels after. A storm. The furniture's in the same place. But the air remembers. I wrote 3 dates on a sticky note and put it on the fridge where everyone had been pretending we were a polite democracy. Jan 2, third-party meeting. Jan 10, house rules Jan 25, move out, 12 p.m. civil standby. Scheduled. Sienna saw it first. She stared like she could will the ink to wobble. Civil standby? She said. It's an appointment with the sheriff, I said. If we don't need it, good. If we do, we won't be improvising. She smiled that narrow smile that had never once reached past her teeth. You're very dramatic, Arthur. It's smoke. Detectors? I said, rinsing my mug. I've been dramatic about worse. She dropped it. People who like to control the ending don't enjoy talking about beginnings they didn't. Script. The group text pinged at lunchtime. Family meeting today, 3 p.m., living room. Sienna's name on it. Darren's thumbs up, a few neutral. Dots from cousins who wanted dessert more than conflict. I replied, I'll meet with a neutral present. Library meeting room B, Jan 2. 5 p.m. city mediator, courting aloud. If you decline, we won't meet. 3 dots appeared. Appeared again. Sienna, we don't need a stranger in our family business. Me. That's the point. We did not gather in my living room with cocoa and knives. I spent the afternoon in the garage with a rag in Margaret's toolbox, wiping wrenches I knew by weight, not brand. The ring pinged and I didn't look. On January 2nd, we met at the library. Room B smelled like old carpet and resolve. The mediator, a woman in her 50s named Caroline, with a spiral notebook and a voice trained on de-escalation, set down ground rules and 2 boxes of tissues. She had seen more family fights than most judges. Who needs to speak first? She asked. Sienna raised a manicured hand. We're concerned about Arthur's safety, she said. It's vulnerable to scams. He's retitling assets. It's when Caroline held up a palm. 1 at a time. No diagnoses. Objectives. Facts only. Mr. Bell, your boundary. My house is in a trust. My life estate is recorded. I offered 30 days grace, rent-free. If they behave like guests. They move out January 25th at noon. I'll pay first month's rent at a place. That doesn't smell like a mistake. If not, I'll ask the sheriff for a civil standby. And I want a 90-day no contact after move out unless it's essential and respectful. Then we can talk about rebuilding. Caroline turned. Darren, you look like a man who had slept under an apology and only half believed in it. I messed this up, he said. I thought I was fixing things. We'll leave by the 25th. Sienna inhaled an argument and cleaned it into a sentence. We'll need a lease after the 90 days, she said. We need a plan. No lease, I said. I'm not your landlord. If after 90 days you want to sit with a counselor who isn't trying to sell any of us a narrative, we can try a dinner, somewhere with good pie and bad lighting. That's all I'm offering today, Carolyn wrote. Move out terms. No contact. First month rent offered. Then she said to Sienna, any safety concerns you want to document? Sienna opened her mouth, closed it, and picked up her pen. The paper didn't move. We signed a 1-page move-out agreement. Caroline notarized copies like a priest blessing plain water. Email me if anything goes sideways, she said.
Oh, you are allowed to have a quiet January?
Sideways arrived anyway. On January 5th, a man in a polo showed up with a laser measure and a clipboard, and I have a work order for new windows. He took 2 steps into the foyer before the house itself told him his feet were wrong. I stepped out. Of the study who called you? He said, checking his clipboard. Sienna, Belle, this is not her house, I said. You are trespassing. Please leave. He lifted his hands. I don't want trouble, sir. Me neither, I said, watching through the glass as he backed to the porch. I texted Evelyn the photo from the ring of him measuring the casement, and she texted back a single word, documented. On January 7th, a man with glossy hair and a leather portfolio slid a letter under the front door. Demand to vacate, it said, as if he thought I was the one being asked to leave. Evelyn called him before his car hit the stop sign. Counsel, she said pleasantly. Your demand is defective, ill-advised, and adorable. If your client wants to test a baseless elder incapacity petition in front of a judge who's seen this movie, I will bring a doctor's letter, a video of your client's client on a front lawn with a realtor, and a box of receipts that could build a fort. File it, and I'll file a Rule 11 for sanctions. Or, and hear me out, your client could stop. He chose stop. At least on paper? On January 10th, I taped the house rules to the fridge under the sticky note with the dates. House rules for January guest version. It wasn't long, no contractors, no parties, no charges on the shared account. It's closed anyway, no assisted. Living brochures on the island, quiet by 10. The clock needs sleep. Dishes are a team sport. Darren read it and nodded. Sienna read it and smiled with her eyes closed. They ate separately. They moved boxes, not as quietly as they thought. She narrated phone calls to friends in the bright voice people use when they want their words to be overheard, or transitioning. He's very attached. I let it hit the wall and slide down. Some sentences aren't worth catching. Jan 12, the sheriff's office confirmed my civil standby. Deputy Lewis, January 25th, noon. He said the words matter-of-factly, like trash collection or Tuesday. Do you expect trouble? He asked. No, I said. But I expect people to act like they're losing something. He understood that sentence on January 17th. I met with the superintendent of the district in a small office that had a poster of a mountain and the word perseverance hanging crooked. We talked about the scholarship Margaret and I had whispered about when we didn't know we were making a plan larger than ourselves. The Margaret Bell Scholarship, I said. For kids who can't see the ladder yet. Trade school or college. One a year until we can do more. The superintendent smiled. We have a list longer than either of us wants, she said. You'd be changing more than a nameplate. Back home, I set an old photo on my dresser, Margaret, in a red scarf. On a day so cold, the air looked like crystal when you breathed it. We're finally doing it, I told her. The clock in the hallway agreed. On January 20th, the garage filled with the winter light that makes tools look holy. I was standing the edge of a chair that had been splintering in exactly the same place for a decade. When the side door opened and closed with care, Darren he didn't stand in the doorway performing. He came in, closed it gently, and leaned his back against it like he was holding something outside with his elbows. He looked at the bench the way you look at an altar when you're not sure if you believe. Dad, he said. I waited. I learned a long time ago that if you jump to the end of a sentence, you miss the part that matters. He picked up the old 3/8 ratchet he used to think was too heavy and turned it in his hands. I don't know how to fix what I broke, he said. I don't know where to put my hands, was the sentence. The one I had been waiting for since the day. I put a wrench in those same hands and watched him turn a bolt the wrong way with such confidence. I wondered what shape his life would take. Good, I said, and he blinked at me. Not knowing is how you start. People who think they do are scarier. He laughed once, the sound a man makes when he recognizes himself and doesn't hate what he sees. Then he stopped. She wants to fight, he said, quiet. She says we can win if we say the right words loud enough. And you? I want to leave, he said. I want to pack a box and sign a lease and shut up and go to work and stop reading lines I didn't write. You can do that. I said, it will hurt, do it anyway. He ran a hand over his face. I'm sorry, he said. It came out like he'd been carrying it with his teeth. Not just for the dinner. For the months I let her talk for me, for using your money. To make her parties look like charity, for telling people you were thinking about assisted living because it sounded nicer than the truth, which was I wanted your house. Thank you, I said. Now fix what you can. How he said, tell me like I'm 12. And there's a nut frozen in place, and my hand hurts. I pointed at the chair. First, stop yanking. Penetrating oil? Let it sit. Then the right socket, 2 hands, steady pressure. No hero moves. And if it's still stuck, heat, controlled, slow. You don't torch the thing. You warm it until the metal remembers it wants to move. He closed his eyes and breathed out a laugh. You're not talking about chairs, he said. I am, I said. And you, he set the ratchet down. I told her I'm moving out on the 25th, he said. She said I'd be back by Valentine's. I told her we were done writing our names on things we didn't pay for. How'd that go? I asked. Like heat, he said. Slow, controlled. It still hurts. We stood in the garage and listened to the day. He picked up a wrench and tightened nothing, then loosened it. He was learning to feel for resistance that isn't obvious. After. I go, he said. Can I? Can I come back to the garage? Not the house. The garage. I'll ask first. I'll bring coffee and shut up. Yes, I said. It's conditions. His mouth twitched like he'd been expecting homework. What are they? Separate accounts? I said a job you can describe without flinching. Therapy. Twice a month. Not because you're broken. Because you need a witness while you put your life together in the open. And the scholarship to Saturdays this spring helping read applications. You'll sit in a chair until your back hurts and remember what ladders look like from the bottom. He nodded like a man at a bench. Okay, he said. Okay. Stood a while longer. When he left, he put the ratchet back exactly where it belonged. That's how I knew. The days ran on their rails. A therapist's card appeared on the counter. A lease was signed at a complex not far from where I've bought. Nails for 30 years. Boxers left the guest room in stacks. Sienna packed with an efficiency you had to admire even as you refused to clap. She stopped narrating every phone call. Sometimes silence is people admitting they're tired in a language they don't speak. Out loud, on January 24th, a text from Evelyn. I'll be available tomorrow, if needed. On January 24th, a ping from the bank, attempted transfer blocked. On January 24th, a message from Deputy Lewis confirming noon and suggesting I put the dog if I had one in a back room. I smiled. We never got a dog. Margaret had wanted a cat. I thought. About it now, January 25th came anyway. Asterisk, I woke early on the 25th. The house was still, the kind of still that makes you hear your own breath. I made coffee and did the things men do when they're pretending not to count minutes. Wiped a clean counter, folded a clean towel, straightened a stack of mail that had already learned to behave. At 9 a.m. I took photographs. Every room, every wall, not to post, to remember. The study that had become a refuge. The mastermind again bed, made the way Margaret used to, smooth enough to feel like intention. The hallway of photos Darren had taped up like a campaign his. Kid grin, his cap, his vows now taken down and stacked face to face, rubber banded, not thrown away, at 10. I laid out a small array on the kitchen island. 2 sets of house keys labeled with masking tape front. Back garage remotes with batteries removed. A printed device list with their names already removed from Wi-Fi and Ring, as sealed cashiers. Check for first month's rent at the apartment Darren had signed for, and a single page on top. Move-out terms as agreed January 2nd with mediator. No adjectives. Just dates and signatures, and the word returned where it needed to be. At 11:58, a white cruiser eased to the curb. Deputy Lewis was early, a good sign. He stepped out, squared shoulders without swagger, scanned the street the way men do who prefer. Quiet, Mr. Bell, he said, tipping his chin. You Arthur. I am. We're just here to keep peace, he said. No judgments. They have till noon to be civil. If they need more time to load, we'll do civil. If they need to hear the word trespass, we can do that too. Thank you, I said. He walked through the house with me once, not taking notes, just looking like a man making a mental map. You got a list? He asked. I showed him the island. He nodded at the keys like they'd done their time. Good. he said. We'll collect these when they're out. At 12:07, Darren's car pulled up. Sienna sat in the passenger seat, sunglasses on despite heavy cloud, jaw set in a way that made the air declare itself. They were late on purpose. Certain performances call for an audience. Boxes were already stacked by the door books a blender. Coats and trash bags tied at the top like balloons that had lost their point. I'd moved them down at 8 a.m. because it was work, and I know how to do work. Darren came in first, eyes on the floor, then up. "Deputy," he said. "Afternoon," Lewis said. Sienna followed, took off her sunglasses like a reveal that didn't reveal anything new. She glanced over the island spread and raised an eyebrow at the cashier's check. "Your flourish," she said. "My promise." I said they started loading. No shouting, no knocking holes in drywall.
Dad, play that?
That would come later if it came at all. Sienna moved quickly, efficient as a foreman, calling out items to Darren. Mixer hours. Console table hours. "Sewing machine, no," I said, from the threshold. "That was Margaret's." Sienna paused, hand on the handle. She looked. At me, then at Deputy Lewis, then at the machine, old and heavy, the way certain devotion is. She let go. "House rules," Lewis said mildly. They kept going. Twice, Sienna took photos with her phone, angling for bad light. Twice, Deputy Lewis said, "Ma'am," and once, "No need for pictures unless something breaks. Let's keep it simple." At 12:40, they hit the last rope. It always happens then, when the floor of a plan gives way and someone decides maybe they can pound the ground back into the shape they wanted. Sienna stood in the foyer with a box labeled "Kitchen Fragile" and said, "Loud enough for the living room and the deputy and the absent audience in her head to hear? Arthur, you're forcing your only son out of his home." The old me would have argued from a place that had never won anything but a headache. Man holding the line did not. "I'm enforcing an agreement you signed," I said. "Even. You're leaving as guests. You're leaving with first month's rent paid. You're leaving with your things. That's what's happening." She stepped toward me, box down, hands empty, eyes sharpened like glass. "You're going to die alone," she said, soft as sugar on poison. Deputy Lewis moved half a step, enough to be the third thing in the room. "Ma'am," he said, that same mild tone that implies statute. "You can vent or you can move. Noon was 40 minutes ago. Let's finish." She pivoted. "He's unstable," she said to the deputy, pointing at me like a weather vane. "He's been making irrational decisions. This lawyer got to him." "Elder abuse stopped," the deputy said, not raising his voice. "If you think there's abuse, you file a complaint. Don't say it in a FOIA. And you don't say it as a tactic. Day is about moving out without breaking anything." She swallowed whatever was next and picked up the box. The word guardianship hung unspoken in the air and then fell because there was no place for it to land today. At 1:05, last bag went into the trunk. Darren walked back in with his keys in his hand, palm up like a boy bringing a bug for inspection. He laid them on the island, set the garage remote beside them. He didn't look at me. He did the thing I'd been waiting for with a smallness that mattered. He took the mask off inside the house. The one he wore for the people who like rooms where you can hear yourself echo. Only us now. Sienna stood at the threshold with her sunglasses back on, ready for a parting shot. "Calculations make their own wind-up. This isn't over," she said. "We'll tell people what you did. We'll tell them you kicked your family out on Christmas. We'll tell them you've lost your capacity. You're under influence. You're being exploited. We'll make sure you're not invited to places. You think you own? It was the moment you lose a fight by trying to win it." I did not take the bait. I took the oxygen. "No interviews," I said. "No statements. If anyone asks me, I'll say, they moved out, as agreed. I wish them well. Please respect our privacy. If you tell a different story, do it without my name. If you put my name on your story, you can talk to my lawyer." I picked up a small envelope I had placed by the keys and held it out. "This has the cashier's check for first month's rent, copy of the mediator agreement, and one page with 2 lines, all further communication in writing, through the mediator or counsel only. There's also the address for your landlord. If you need them to confirm payment, that's all." She didn't extend her hand. Darren did. He took the envelope like it weighed what it did. Not more than paper, not less than boundary. He slid it into his coat. Sienna looked at Deputy Lewis, then at me, then at a middle distance where the next play usually waited. There wasn't one that worked here. Not today. She put her sunglasses back on because some endings are easier in tint. They turned to go. At the curb, she pivoted. Last look, last line. "We'll file for guardianship," she said. "Quiet enough to feel private, loud enough to be reported." "You can try," I said. "A judge will read a doctor's letter, and a mediator's notes, and a trust I signed with witnesses. If she thinks I need help, she'll appoint a guardian ad litem and not your father. But I don't need a guardian. I need a January without theater." Deputy Lewis cleared his throat, polite reminder that the stage was closed. They got in. The car pulled away. The house exhaled. "Not many folks do that quiet," Lewis said. "You'd be surprised. I used to think volume wins," I said. "Turns out paper and time do." He grinned. "We say procedure," he said. "Same thing." He shook my hand and left me to my walls. I walked through the house once more. Not to gloat, it's to meet it again. Study, bedroom hall, kitchen. The clock in the hall ticked like a drummer who has finally found the tempo. I set the keys in a small bowl near the door and did a thing I should have done a year earlier. I deleted everyone from the Ring app except me. Then I took the doorbell faceplate off, held its little rectangle in my hand like a lie that had lost its job, put it in the junk drawer with old rubber bands and the Allen wrench that fits only one chair. Then I sat at the dining table with the scratches in it and wrote the only message I was going to send to people who might be tempted to eat rumors like, "Oh, you've subject a favor." Family Darren and Sienna moved out today, so we agreed with a mediator. I wish them well and ask you to respect our privacy for 90 days. Please come to me directly if you have questions. Otherwise, don't carry stories for any of us. I'm staying in my home. I'm hot. She wrote back exactly what I needed. Proud of you, Rest. Then to Ben, who replied with a thumbs up and an offer to lift anything heavy. Then to the cousins who liked to narrate. Then I closed my laptop and let silence do the talking. That night, a friend of Sienna's posted a photo of the white tent from a holiday party. I hadn't attended and captioned it with a sentence that wanted to start a fire. Some people don't know how to be grateful. I didn't reply. Kay from the hardware store who's rung me up for screws and sandpaper since the Bush administration left a comment. Gratitude is a verb, and she left another. He buys his own screws. I slept fine. The next morning, a card. From Caroline, the mediator, arrived in my inbox. I don't know how she knew to send it the day after, but good mediators are good at clocks. You held the line, it read. If you need a follow-up session in April, I'll be here. Until then, no meetings. I printed it out and stuck it to the fridge under the house rules, which now felt like the first chapter of a manual I could actually use. At noon, I met with the superintendent again. We set a date for the first committee meeting for the Margaret Bell Scholarship, March 15th. I told her I wanted one non-negotiable criterion: work. Not grades alone, not test scores alone. Work that looks like holding a job and holding a sibling and holding your head when two truths won at school and survival. Done, she said. Bring tissues. The essays will get you. On the way. Home, I stopped at the hardware store and bought a small brass hook and 2 screws. I mounted it inside the front hall, just to the right of the door, and hung the keys bowl there, out of sight, easy reach. A home makes sense when the small things have places at 4. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't know. Mr. Bell? A woman asked. Adult Protective Services. We received a report of possible financial abuse of me, I asked. Yes, sir, she said. We'd like to do a wellness check. I almost laughed, of course, I said. Come by. Bring a clipboard. I'll make coffee. She came at 6. A young woman with a tired smile and a badge. I poured coffee, showed her the doctor's letter, the trust, the mediator agreement. She listened. Eyes attentive in a way that made me grateful for bureaucrats who choose the right side of the desk, sir, she said finally. We have to make the call on site. My note will say no concerns. I'm sorry you had to put up with this. I'm not, I said, surprising both of us. It meant I had something to take back. When she left, I wrote one last note and slid it under the brass hook with the keys bowl. Locksrokide Friday, 10 a.m. Evelyn's recommendation. Wi-Fi password change done, ring faceplate in junk drawer. Consider trash porch light new bowl by. Ate dinner at the island. It's toast to tomato. Because I felt like the kind of person who eats tomatoes at night and calls it balance. I washed the plate and set it in the rack and watched the pre-dawn of a new habit back. It's way into the room. At 8 p.m., the side door opened and closed with care. Darren didn't come in. He didn't need to. The garage is its own country. I met him there. He held 2 coffees and a bag that smelled like sandwiches people put real thought into. He wore no mask, set the coffee on the bench, and slid the bag toward me like he remembered who fed him first. I sent the no-contact notice to my phone. He said, I won't call. I'll email if I need to. I'll send receipts. I'll be at the apartment. It's small. Good, I said. I start a job on Monday, he said. Operations, warehouse, temp through March, not a desk. It felt right. I said. You'll sleep like a person. He nodded. And I saw a therapist yesterday, he added, not quite meeting my eye. I told a stranger I let someone else write my sentences. She told me to write 1 truth a day and leave it where I can see it. Do it, I said. He lifted his cup. To Margaret, he said, unprompted. To Margaret, I said, we drank coffee that didn't need sugar to feel like sweetness had returned to the room. I slept, the house slept. Even the clock ticked like it had waited its whole pendulum. Life to be this uncomplicated. The oxygen was gone from the wrong story. What remained was heat and paper, a quiet January I intended to keep. Asterisk, 2 days after move out. The roomer walked in wearing nice shoes, a concerned friend. Posted on the neighborhood forum about a vulnerable elder being influenced. The words were careful, intent wasn't. A cousin who loves to carry buckets of water for other people's fires forwarded it with a subject line that said, thoughts. I had one. I did not type it. I sent 2 emails and made 1 call too. Caroline, the mediator, you may see noise. Here are my only statements. They moved out as agreed. Wish them well. Please respect our privacy, she replied with a single word I like in professionals. Noted. 2 apps, yes. The same young woman who came by with a badge and tired eyes. If you get more reports, my door's open. She wrote back, file closed. If reopened, same process. We remember. To Elaine, if anyone calls you, say, ask Arthur. Don't speculate, she wrote. Already did. Kay from the hardware store left a comment under the forum. Post that ended the trial by emoji. I've rung up Arthur for screws and sandpaper for 20 years. He reads his receipts. He knows his mind. If you're worried, bring a casserole. Otherwise, leave him alone. 3 other women added something I could live inside, a phone number, and offered to shovel a walk if it ever snowed, a pie. Sienna tried a softer version on her own page-old party photos. Glowing captions about care, a line about heartbreak. Comments were turned off. The air moved once and then settled. Without oxygen, even pretty smoke disappears. Darren's first week on the floor started the way new things do, early, sore, honest. He texted the night before which boots. Sent a photo of my old steel toes with the toe cap scuffed too. Naked metal. These, I said, and bring a knife that locks. Redline fulfillment sat under the freeway like work always has to loud to be seen by people who need it to be invisible. He met his foreman, square-jawed man with a baseball cap and a first-name last name that sounded like a whistle. Troy Baines. Troy didn't smile. Didn't need to. 3 rules, Troy said, walking him through Bay 2. Early is on time. Don't leave a jack in an aisle. If you screw something up, say my miss. Fix it. Tell the person behind you so you don't make your mistake contagious. He handed Darren an orange safety vest and a marker. Write your name where people can see it. You think that's kindergarten? It's accountability. Day 1. Orientation and the humbling weight of tape that doesn't rip evenly. Day 2. Pallet stacking, tape gun blisters, and the hard lesson that you don't sprint the first 2 hours if you want your legs at 4. Day 3. He turned too fast with a box and clipped a post. The box wobbled. He caught it. He looked at Troy. My miss, he said, chest heaving. Troy nodded once. Reset your rhythm, he said. We don't win with speed. We win with flow. By Friday, Darren had a small, proud inventory. 1 box knife that didn't fight him. 2 calluses that finally decided to belong. A nickname from a guy named JJ, online C College, said with fond mockery and no malice, and a habit. He'd never had a 15-minute Turley instinct. That made his foreman trust him with the gate when the rain started. He came by the garage that night like it was a chapel. He stood with his hands on the bench and didn't brag. He put a note on the pegboard, a simple one, because his therapist had told him to write 1 truth a day and leave it where he could see it. Truth. 6. Showed up 15 minutes early. It was the guy with the knife, not the guy with the story. I left it. The scholarship committee's first meeting wasn't the official March date with all the pomp. It was a pre-read around a folding table in a conference. A room at the district office that smelled like dry erase markers and coffee that had been sitting on a burner. Just long enough to tell on itself. The superintendent Dr. Morales, short. Sharp sleeves rolled, sat with a stack of applications that looked like a promise and a dare. A guidance counselor named Mr. Green, who had a tie that managed to be both brave and tired, slid me the first set. We pre-screened for income and residency, he said. You asked for work. We sorted for that too. Kay from the hardware. Store took a seat at the end. I sell ladders, she said. Figured I should help hand a few out. She took out her reading glasses like she wasn't apologizing for needing them. We read, said a simple rubric work, purpose, grit, grades as evidence, not God's. We didn't rush, cried a little when the words earned it. A kid named Mateo wrote about building a wheelchair ramp from scrap lumber for his grandmother. Because the landlord kept promising a fix and forgetting, I figured slope by how my knees felt, he wrote. Then I looked it up and realized I was close. I redid. My knees were right. A girl named Lila wrote about holding down the register at her mom's laundromat from 6 to 10 p.m., then doing homework in the back on a milk crate while her mom slept in a chair with a towel over her face to block the fluorescent. I hate the towel, she wrote, but I love what it means. A boy named Riku wrote about taking apart an old lawnmower to build a go-kart that ran for 6 minutes, which was all the victory anyone needs when you're 17 and learning. How to turn stubborn into forward? I texted Darren, committee. 6 p.m. Kay's here. Bring your truth and a highlighter. He came after his shift, sweat still drying, eyes clear in the way you only earn by putting your body into something that matters. He sat at the corner, quiet, he read. He circled a line in one essay and looked up. This one, he said. She doesn't make a speech about work. She just does it. That should count. He did. He argued softly and right, stayed until the coffee turned bitter and the tower of maybe turned into a smaller stack of yes. He left with 2 extra essays to read on his own and a different look on his face, the kind I had last seen the year he learned. He could turn a wrench the correct way without being told twice. The surprise envelope arrived on a Wednesday in a hand I recognized even before the return address told me who'd sent it. June Ellison. Margaret's first roommate from the hospital where they'd both worked nights in their 20s, long before I fixed my first roof, long before Darren existed as anything but a possibility they laughed about into their tea. Her note was short and precise, like she wrote when she had to deliver truth to families who weren't ready. Arthur, if you're reading this, You finally started the thing she made me promise to fund when you were being stubborn. Word scholarship into an actual sentence with a date. Enclosed, the tool Margaret left me. Inside, a simple cashier's check for $24,024. Years since Margaret had whispered the first sketch of the idea after a graduation, where a boy thanked a stranger for putting a wrench in his hand. And a second thing I didn't expect, a second envelope. Yellowed at the edges, sealed, Margaret's handwriting on the front like a light, to Arthur when the kids start showing up. I held it. I didn't open it standing in the hallway like a man on a sitcom. I took it to the kitchen, made tea the way she used to, oversteeped. Honey Ann sat at the table that still had the tiny scratch where a screwdriver slipped the year Darren. Tried to build a model airplane and ended up building a dent. I opened the letter. Arthur, if I'm right. You waited too long, but not too late. Good. Stubborn has uses two things. Don't make scholarship mean 4-year or bust. We were poor. We didn't need lectures. We needed tools. Split the fund, books and tuition for the ones who need classrooms. Tools and fees for the ones who need apprenticeships. A kid with a set of wrenches and a paid exam is a different kid than a kid with a framed essay. Open the garage one night a month. Call it fix night. Invite kids to bring a thing that's broken and a story they can't tell anywhere else without feeling small. Show them the right socket. Show them penetrating oil and patience. Send them home with something that works. Send them home with their hands smelling like metal and possibility. If you're tempted to apologize for not doing this sooner, don't. Just do it now. Love you loud. You are always steady. Be loud for this one thing. I sat with the paper and thought about slope and knees and towels and 6-minute go-karts and a kid in a laundromat. Under fluorescence, learning a kind of math without numbers. I called June. You. Did it, she said, not even waiting to say hello. Not yet, I said. I can. She laughed the laugh of a woman who has known a man long enough to know exactly where to push. Make me a donor, she said. Make it real and invite me to the first fix night. I'll bring brownies and a first aid kit. I called Dr. Morales. We're splitting the fund, I said. Half for school, half for tools and fees. And I'm opening my garage one Thursday a month. She didn't pause. We'll put it in the flyer, she said. And I'll send you a custodian form so you don't get sued if a kid pinches a finger. Send 2, I said. 1 for me and 1 for Kay. I called Kay. You in? Asked. You had me at sockets, she said. I'll bring loaner tools and brand reps hunting good, not logos. Darren came by after his shift. He didn't take off his vest. He stood at the counter with a sandwich and read Margaret's letter, put his hand on it like you put a palm. On a Bible, when you swear to tell the truth, fix night, he said. I'll be there. You'll be in charge of the whiteboard, I said. First rule, no hero moves. Second, every broken thing is allowed to be what it is. We don't make magic. We make progress. He nodded. And maybe a kid learns to say my miss and not die from it. Maybe, I said. Sienna tried one more thing, a petition for emergency guardianship filed on a Friday at 4:52 p.m., as if judges read faster on weekends. Evelyn texted me a screenshot with a line that made me snort despite myself. Alleges confusion over his own address. Evelyn walked it across to the duty judge with our stack, doctor's letter, mediator agreement, app's closeout note, trust, notices. It's the photo of Sienna and the realtor on the lawn. The judge denied it on paper with a sentence, liked for its simplicity. Insufficient grounds. No emergency. Evelyn copied me. Boundaries hold, she wrote. Go plan your garage night. We set the first date for a Thursday, 2 weeks out. Kay designed a flyer in the kind of font people can read without trying. Darren taped it. Up in the break room at Redline, at the diner, at the laundromat where Lila made change, at the school, at the hardware store. We capped it at 12 kids and asked for RSVPs, 24 wrote. We added a second night in the middle of making. Lists loaner tools, oil rags. Pete's eye looked at Margaret's letter again and realized she'd given me permission. I didn't know I'd been waiting for, to be loud about the thing that mattered and quiet about everything else. On the fridge, under the house rules that had served their purpose, I taped a new sheet. A code. Not a list. No meetings without a neutral. Paper before performance. Work before words. Kindness when earned. No adjectives when a noun will do. Ladders and tools. Up, Darren. Took a photo of it and set it as his phone lock screen. We didn't announce any of this online. I told the people who needed to know. The room my garage would do the announcing when wrenches turned and things moved that had been stuck. That night, sat at the bench and wrote a note in my own hand to put with Margaret's in an envelope for a day I hoped would come some. Kid 20 years from now, starting a thing and thinking he should have started it yesterday. Start now, I wrote. We forgive ourselves by building. Asterisk. We set up the garage like a church that knew what it was for. Kay rolled in 2 yellow bins of loaner. Tools, sockets, and labeled trays, driver bits nested like good ideas. 2 cordless drills that had seen drywall and still wanted more. I cleared the bench, wiped it twice, then wiped it again because some rituals need excess to feel like enough. Darren hung a whiteboard on the pegboard and wrote the rules in block letters, big as courage. No hero moves my miss, then fix ask. First, put tools back where a tired person can find them. Leave with something that works, even if it's a plan. June arrived with brownies and a first aid kit and a look that said she'd measure a pulse if anyone got sentimental. First kid carried a clock. He held it tight against his chest, like it could fall apart if the air made the wrong sound. Walnut case, glass door, pendulum inside, like an idea you're afraid to try because it might prove you wrong. He looked at me and then nodded at me. I recognized the move. I'm Caleb, he mumbled. It used to tick. We set it on the bench. I opened the glass and let the smell of old oil and dust and hallway air fill the space above the vise. He told me it had been his grandmother's. He told me it stopped the week she left for Texas. He told me he tried to make it go by pushing the pendulum harder. There's your first lesson, I said softly. Clocks don't run on force. Run on balance. We leveled the case with 2 nickels under the short foot because the floor sloped a whisper to the right. I showed him the escapement through the glass, in out like breathing. I held his hand under the case and let him feel the faint push that is a clock deciding to keep its promise. Listen, I said. Is it tick, T-O-C-K, or T-I-C-K talk? He cocked his head. It's off. Good ear. I slid the pendulum bob a turn, then another. Schwummed. The left side with a playing card. He watched the arc grow, even then steadier. Now you try, I said, stepping back. He said it gently. Tick-tock settled into the room like a heartbeat the walls had been waiting for. Smiled, small and sudden, the way people smile when something outside them matches what they hoped inside. Why nickels? He asked. Because they're what I had, I said. Because level is more important than expensive. He repeated it like a sentence he could write later. Because level is more important than expensive. On the other bench, a girl named Miri took apart a kitchen faucet with Kay while Darren stood at the edge and kept a hand on the parts tray. Job that looks like nothing and keeps the night from turning into a scavenger hunt. A kid named Jay learned how to clean a bike chain without baptizing the sidewalk in grease. 2 boys from the auto tech class rewired a lamp using a cord Kay had thrown in a bin because she's the kind of woman who believes in second chances. For copper, we ate pizza on napkins and nobody asked for paper plates. June passed the brownies and made a teenage boy eat a second because she could tell he'd had chips for dinner and bravado for dessert. Too many nights this week? Can I bring the clock back? Caleb asked when we were packing up. Yes, I said. Second Thursday, same time. Bring a friend who needs to hear a thing tick. He nodded. I will. He left with the clock under his arm. I stood in the doorway and listened until his footsteps turned into street noise. But the garage still held the tick-tock. My own chest matched it without asking me. The next morning, Sienna showed up with a camera and a smile that had never learned to love a warehouse. Redline isn't made for that kind of pretty. It's made for the kind of pretty you only notice When you've kept flow for 6 hours and nobody gets hurt and the line goes green. Darren had just clocked in. He was doing what Troy called the walk. 30 seconds to look at the bay. Move the jack, check the tape, count the corners. Darren? She called across the concrete like it was a TV show and he was a rescue arc. He didn't flinch. He didn't look at the lens. He kept moving his eyes the way Troy had taught him. Left, right, up, down hooks, feet, racks, people. For the knife he'd learned to carry and cut the twine on a pallet like it owed him calm, she stepped into his walk. The cameraman dipped to get a low angle near his boots. "Let's show them," she said. "Bright, you and me. We're grown-ups. We can disagree and still be beautiful." He stopped then, slow, set the knife down, looked at Troy. Foremen like Troy keep 100 men safe by knowing which second matters. He stepped in. "No filming on the floor," Troy said. "Flat. Policy. Off the dock." "It's my husband," Sienna said to Troy. "Full wattage." "We're reconciling." "He's my worker," Troy said, not unkind. "He's reconciling with a shift." She looked at Darren for rescue. The way people do when their own reflection stops answering. He used no adjectives, used the only noun and verb he had earned. "I'm at work," he said. "Send anything in writing to the mediator or to counsel. No cameras in my bay." She tried a sharper key. "You're welcome for the life I built for you," she said. "You'll be back." Valentine's, like I said. You didn't argue. He looked at Troy. Troy lifted his chin minutely. The security guard, a woman named Penelope with a duty belt and a temper like a lid on a pot she refuses to boil, arrived and escorted them to the front office with a posture that said, "This way to leaving dot at lunch." JJ from line C slid half a sandwich toward Darren. "You can have camera or knife," he said. "Matter of fact, not both." "Knife," Darren said, and they ate that afternoon. He wrote truth number 12 on the whiteboard in the garage. Said no without explaining. Doc stayed green. The scholarship. Decisions needed a table and a porch and pie to feel right. We kept it small, Dr. Morales. Brought simple envelopes with school letterhead. Kay set a cardboard box filled with tools on the step, metric and imperial, because life rarely agrees. June put a stack of gift cards for exam fees and a coffee can with MB written on the side in black Sharpie. Darren strung 2 strings of lights across the porch white. Steady, not trying to be magic. We invited 5 finalists and their families to the porch at 6 on a Saturday that felt like spring was deciding to rehearse. We had chairs that didn't match. We had pie on paper plates after all, because I am not unreasonable, and you can't cut pecan properly standing up. We handed out 3 scholarships with little speeches that refused to be speeches. Lila from the laundromat books, tuition, and a laptop. Because Kay got a brand rep to donate one without letting anyone bring a banner. Riku, the go-kart, kid tool grant, exam fee for Ace, and 8 Saturday hours in a shop Kay had picked. For being clean and kind, Teotha ramp apprenticeship, stipend for a summer with a contractor who'd agreed to teach slope with a level and not with yelling. Caleb came with his grandmother, because he had read the flyer and thought maybe Fixed Night was a place you could bring gratitude. He held the clock like it was part of his arms now. It ticked. He wanted us to hear. "Bring it tomorrow," I told him. "We'll talk about oil." We took a photo after I made sure no one's eyes were wet. No logos, no step hand repeat. Just faces and envelopes, and a box of tools, and a porch that had seen more weather than any of us, and still did its job. When everyone left, Kay sat on the steps and kicked a sneaker at a dead leaf. "You did it," she said. "We did it," I said. "Don't argue with me when I'm giving you credit," she said. "Men are exhausting." June laughed and handed me a dish towel because there were plates. Darren cleared without narration. He set the envelopes in a stack and took one moment with his finger on the MB coffee can. Like he knew the name belonged to the room after they went. I stayed on the porch and listened to the neighborhood version of Quiet Cars, a dog complaining. About a squirrel that had already left, the small noises houses make when they settle and know they're safe. The next morning, I sorted Margaret's toolbox for the first time in years, like I wasn't going to stop halfway and put the lid down, because grief had its own hinges. Under the tray with the driver bits, hidden under a rag that had once been a kitchen towel, with strawberries on it. I found a weight that felt like the past meant to be picked up. A brass plumb bob, small tapered, with a bit of string wound around its throat. There was a scratch down one side you'd miss if you didn't know her habit of turning accidents into art. Letters. Tiny hand. Not M, not A word true. I held it the way you hold a newborn's foot, careful, stunned, reverent about how much weight something small can carry. I tied the string to a nail on the bench shelf and watched it hang. It found the center, the way good tools do when you give them rope and time. I took it to the hallway and hung it by the grandfather clock. The bubble in the level I'd set on top of the case was a whisper off to the left. The plumb bob didn't care. It hung where down lives. I shimmed the right foot a sliver with a folded postcard and watched the string align with the edge of the case like an apology accepted. In the garage that night, I held the plum up for a semicircle of kids wearing safety glasses too big for them and the bravado to wear them anyway. This, he said, is how buildings remember how not to fall. Down. This is how you check yourself when your eyes lie. When you can't see straight, go to plumb. When you can't feel steady, find level. When you don't know what to do, listen for TikTok and make it even. Darren stood in the back, arms crossed in the way that means a man is keeping heat in, not keeping the world out. He nodded once, small. Fix night ended with a boy who had broken a ceiling fan pull chain on purpose because he thought it would make the light turn off faster. We laughed. We fixed it. He wrote my miss on the whiteboard and then added fix beneath it without prodding. On my fridge. I took down the old House Rules Guests version and put up the code we'd made with one more word in Margaret's. Hand stolen from the plum and given back to the room. No meetings without a neutral paper, before performance work, before words kindness. When earned, no adjectives. When a noun will do ladders and tools of true. Sienna sent one last email through the mediator. Curt and clear. We will not be attending further sessions, she wrote. We will not contest the trust. You can read defeat or relief in a sentence like that depending on the day. I chose relief. Darren didn't reply, didn't need to. He did 3 things instead. Showed up 15 minutes early every day. He took the knife, not the camera. And he signed up to read scholarship essays on a Friday after a shift that had beat every useless part of him down and left the piece that learns how to stand on Sunday. I wound the grandfather clock with the plumb bob hanging beside it like a reminder that straight isn't a feeling. It's a choice over time. The tick-tock settled in. Pendulum swung. The house finally kept good time. Asterisk spring came like a decision. The camellia under the front window put out 3 blossoms that looked like someone had remembered how to do something simple well. The porch boards warmed. The house settled into its shape with me inside it. Not as a guest, but as the person who paid attention. Fix night number 3 filled the garage before the pizza arrived. Kay lined up the loaner tools. June set brownies where hands would find them without asking. Darren wrote the rules in big black letters and underlined the last line twice. Leave with something that works, even if it's a plan, a kid named Theo. Rolled in a wobbly bike with a front wheel that wanted to argue with him. He had put on bravery like a jacket that didn't fit yet. It pulls, he said, showing me the scuffed knee he'd earned losing the argument. We hung the bike, pointed to the quick release, and then to the fork dropouts. See this? I said, it's not seated. Looks right. It's and if you tighten crooked, it holds wrong. He blinked. I tightened harder. There's the thing, I said. Harder isn't smarter. We loosened. We seated. Tightened with straight in mind. The wheel spun and didn't wobble. He breathed like a person who'd been given permission to stop fighting physics. He wrote my miss on the whiteboard and, without prompting, added fix under it. On the other bench, a girl named Amina brought a lamp with a base that felt like it had been dipped in regret. Kay showed her how to strip a cord without nicking copper, how to tie an underwriter's knot, how not to make a fire at the far end. 2 boys in ball caps were fighting a stuck screw in a fan housing with a driver that didn't fit. Stop, I said, loud enough to carry. Put the tool down. They froze, eyes wide, like they'd been caught stealing from their own futures. Stopping is a skill, I said, so is asking. Get a driver that fits, or oil or heat. But no hero moves. Wrote stop in the corner of the board and left it there halfway through the night. The door from the alley opened, and Caleb walked in, clock under his arm, grandmother at his side, both of them holding themselves like people keeping something in one piece. It stopped, he said. Wary. Good, I said, and meant it. Now, we learn oil. We opened the back plate. I showed him where dust lies and where oil belongs and where it doesn't. We cleaned what time had stuck. A drop here, a whisper there. Not syrup, not negligence. Gerda, he set the pendulum and listened. Head cocked. Tick-tock, he said. Even balance, I said. Not force. Darren held up the plumb bob and let it hang. True, he read off the side. Kids leaned in. Plumb tells you where down is when your eyes get noisy, I told. Them, level, tells you how to be fair. They don't care about your feelings. They care about gravity. Learn to like that. They did. Tools back in bins. Pizza equalized. Brownies disappeared. June made a kid take 3 napkins because she could see he was going to try to carry hot slices like a hero. He didn't single quotes toot after the garage went quiet. The bench held the smell of oil and sugar and work. I wrote true under stop on the board, wiped my hands, and went inside. Darren's first promotion came on a Tuesday that looked like every other. Tuesday until it did. Troy found him at the end of Bay 2. HR wants you as shift coordinator, he said, dry like weather. Clipboard, mezzanine, laptop, people. We'll nod when you talk. You'll miss your knife. Darren looked at the floor, then at his hands, then at Troy. Line lead, he said. If you want me more useful, give me a vest with a pen and a whistle, and let me keep my boots where they've been. I'm not ready for a mezzanine. Troy didn't blink. You just saved me 2 months of training you into a man who stares at screens and loses the taste for flow, he said. He handed over a different vest, same orange, small black patch. Lead. 15 cents more an hour, he said. All. The accountability. Same knife. Darren said yes to the floor. He emailed me later, turned down the desk, took the line. Flow greater than speed, knife greater than camera. I wrote back one word and meant it. Good. Sienna tried on a new narrative like a dress she thought would make a stranger clap. Friend sent me a clip. A panel called Women Who Build at a hotel with beige carpets and sponsorship logos. Sienna. Sat in a row of white chairs and talked about learning to let go of toxic ties and starting a new initiative in Austin that centers care. She mentioned a scholarship without saying whose. She implied a fight without naming me. Audience nodded at the sentences people nod at when the lighting is good. The clip did the rounds. It found fewer places to land than it might have 3 months ago. People remember who carried boxes and who brought cameras to loading docks. Kay sent me a text with nothing but a hammer emoji and the word nah. The divorce papers came on. A Thursday like weather, no flourish. Darren sent them back with signatures and no adjectives. No contest to the trust, no more petitions, no more narratives. He texted me one line, no fault, no performance. Signed, the scholarship committee. It's met on a real night with an agenda and a clock and a stack of envelopes. Dr. Morales ran it like a classroom, firm, kind. Kay argued for a kid named Rena who'd kept her family fed for a year on minimum wage and YouTube recipes and still took algebra seriously. June argued for a nursing student who had the hands Margaret would have trusted. With a stitching kit, we chose 3 kids by name and a handful more for tool grants. We cried in the right places and signed forms in triplicate because paper keeps. People honest when feelings get sentimental. We did a small porch ceremony because big rooms twist simple things into speeches. Lila brought her mother. Mateo brought his grandmother in a chair that promised truth and slope. Riku had grease under his nails from a shop that had started to feel like a church. We handed them envelopes and a box of something useful, and told them what Margaret told me when we were poor and proud. Scrub your hands. Keep your head. Cash your check. Call if the math stops making sense. After everyone left, I sat on the step and watched the light move across the planks, like it always has, slow and without permission. I thought about the beginning of this story, the envelope at the table, and the scream I thought was revenge landing. It wasn't revenge. It was a rescue. Of me from my good manners. My house from a story meant to sell it. Of my son from a camera. Of a few kids from a year where no one called them by name and meant it. I wrote a letter that night, not to the court, to the boy. I used to be. You said yes to everything because you thought that was love. You were right until you weren't. You let people paint over walls you liked because you thought paint meant progress. Sometimes it just means someone else picked the color. You gave a house away in your head before anyone asked for it out loud. You can stop that. Here's what I know now. Put things on paper. Trusts are instructions, not prayers. Get a doctor too. Sign what you already know about your mind. Courts read ink. When people say we, ask who we is. If it doesn't include you, say no. Don't let family be a word that excuses theft. Work before words. Knife before camera. Flow over speed. Stop as a skill. Learn it. Teach it. Open your garage one night a month. Let kids bring broken things. Send them home with even a small fix and a plan. Split the fund. Classrooms and toolboxes both build lives. Hang a plumb bob by any clock you care about. True is a direction before it's a feeling. Make room for grief on the bench, then move it to the shelf and bring the next thing in. Love loud when it's time. Be steady every other minute. You did some things late. Do them now. Forgive the part of you that took too long. He was busy holding a roof up and weather up. True. I folded it and slid it under the tray in Margaret's toolbox next to the strawberry towel and the plumb bob. I tied the string once and watched the brass fine down. The scratch with the word she etched, True, caught the light like a lesson. A week later, Caleb came back, clock ticking, grandmother smiling in a way that borrowed nothing. He put 2 nickels under a short foot without me telling him. Level, he said. More important than expensive. Say it again, I said. He did. And it belonged to him now. Darren showed up with a new vest and dirt on his cuffs and a grin he didn't perform. He handed me an envelope, a schedule with his first week as line lead scrawled in pencil, an extra column with a circle around Thursday. Fix night. Can you read essays Friday after shift? He asked. Dr. Morales says we've got more kids. Then chairs. Yes, I said. He leaned against the door jamb. Troy says flow is our politics, he said. Keep people moving. Keep them safe. Make the count without making a story. He looked at the plumb bob, hanging still. His politics? So do I said. He looked toward the kitchen. On the fridge, the code hung where a person could see it by accident and mistake it for something small. No meetings without a neutral paper. Before performance work, before words kindness, when earn no adjectives, when a noun will do ladders and tools up true. He took a photo again. Keep me honest. He said, I will. I said, you keep me loud. He laughed. You loud. For this? I said, we ate sandwiches on the bench and didn't turn on the TV. Kay texted a photo of a kid from the shop holding a wrench like it belonged to him. June texted a photo of a brownie pan empty because June knows a win when she sees one. Dr. Morales emailed a list of tool brands she trusted, which is the kind of help you can use. Elaine sent a picture of a Baltimore sky over a row house with laundry-like flags and wrote, Proud of you, sleep. I wound the grandfather clock before bed. I listened for the even sound and heard it tick, talk, not trying to be beautiful, just doing what time does when you give it a case and care. The plumb bob hung, not asking for attention. Telling the truth without noise. I slept. If you ask me now what Christmas dinner smelled like that year, I'll tell you the lamb was perfect and the rosemary did its job. And I'll tell you the other. Smell I finally named wasn't betrayal. It was resolved. My son once stood and announced I was no longer a member of my own family. I slid him an envelope. He screamed, left. He comes by the garage now. He brings coffee. He reads essays. He runs a line. He says no to cameras. He chooses flow. He carries a knife. We sign his truths on a whiteboard and wipe them off and write new ones, because that is the deal. You get up, you keep going, you check plumb. The house keeps time. The kids keep showing up with things that can be fixed. We fix what we can. Send them home with something that works even if it's just a plan dot up. True.